Your intranet and digital platforms weren't built for how people work today. It is a 2026 reality that most organizations are struggling to accept. And right now, you are likely stuck in a cold war between IT control and maker innovation. This is a silent, draining conflict where the old model assumes it must say no to stay safe. While that seems like a logical assumption, the reality is that it's deeply flawed. Saying no does not actually stop the work from happening, but it does drive your people into the shadows. You aren't stopping risk, you are just losing visibility, which is the exact opposite of what you want. The top 1% of organizations do things differently because they don't gatekeep, they architect. They understand that the bridge between security and speed isn't made of red tape, but is instead built on automation. In the next 24 minutes, we are going to replace those manual roadblocks with automated guardrails. If you don't fix this trust gap now, you will continue paying an innovation tax that will eventually bankrupt your entire digital strategy. Let's fix the model. The structural failure of manual governance. Before we can fix the bridge, we have to look at why it collapsed in the first place. This didn't happen overnight, but rather because we tried to apply 1990s ticket-based logic to a 2026 low-code explosion. Right now, the 80% maintenance tax is killing your department, and most IT budgets are drained by legacy thinking before a single app is even built. You are spending 4 out of every $5 just keeping the lights on in systems that were never designed for scale. This is where the trust starts to erode, because when a maker wants to solve a business problem, they hit a wall. They see a manual ticket system that feels like an innovation killer. And in a world where 30,000 apps can be generated in a single tenant, manual review is impossible. The biggest symptom of this failure is the default environment trap, which we have all seen as the digital slum of the Power Platform. It is a shared space where every user has a license and every user has an opinion, leading to makers encroaching on each other constantly. One person's flow breaks another person's app, the data gets mixed, and the connections become a mess because the model assumes everyone can play in the same sandbox without kicking sand in each other's eyes. They can't, and when IT sees the mess, the natural instinct is to lock everything down. Shadow It isn't a rebellion, but a response to a bottleneck created by the system itself. People aren't trying to be malicious, they are just trying to do their jobs and deliver results for the company. Research shows an 85% incident rate for data loss in these ungoverned spaces, but if you look closer at the data, you'll see it isn't hackers causing the trouble. It's actually careless users trapped in a broken system who use a personal connector because the business one is blocked. They share an app with everyone because the security group request takes 3 weeks to process. And the old model logic says if we can't see it, we have to stop it. We build a gate, but a gate is a binary choice that is either open or closed. In a modern enterprise, you need a spectrum, and when you rely on manual gatekeeping, you create a culture where everyone has to ask for permission. That works when you have 10 apps, but it fails completely when you have 10,000. The manual ticket becomes the enemy of the business, forcing the maker to choose between following the rules or delivering value. Most of the time, they choose the value and go to the shadows to build under the desk using personal accounts. IT loses the very visibility it was trying to protect, and this is the structural failure we have to address. We are trying to use human velocity to govern digital velocity, but you cannot have a person sitting in the middle of a stream that moves at the speed of light. The gatekeeper becomes the bottleneck becomes the excuse for the shadow, and we have to admit that the manual model is bankrupt. It is costing you 80% of your budget and 100% of your maker's trust. We are trying to manage 30,000 solutions with the same mindset we used for 3, and it is time to stop looking at the gate and start looking at the architecture. It needs to stop being the person who says yes or no and start being the entity that builds the road. If the road is built correctly, you don't need a gate, you just need a guardrail. And that shift starts with a fundamental change in how we route the work. We have to move out of the slum. Environment routing as the foundational lever. So how do we move from no to not there? We have to stop trying to fix the default environment and start bypassing it. The solution isn't a better cleanup crew, it's a better architectural starting point. This is where environment routing enters the conversation. It's not just a technical feature you toggle on in the admin center, it is your new primary lever for trust. In the old model, a maker logs in and is dropped into a shared mess. In the new model, the architecture makes the decision for them. Think about the blast radius. When thousands of makers work in a single shared space, one mistake can take down a business-critical process. It's a structural vulnerability. We need to give every maker their own OneDrive for apps. This is the core of the personal developer space. It's an isolated, governed, and secure bubble where an individual can experiment without fear of breaking the neighbor's fence. By moving the work into these isolated containers, you aren't just protecting the tenant, you are protecting the creator. You're giving them the freedom to fail safely, which is the only way to eventually succeed. The mechanics of this are remarkably simple but incredibly powerful. We use auto-redirection. When a new maker hits the portal, the system recognizes them. It doesn't ask IT for a ticket. It doesn't wait for a manual approval. It checks a set of predefined rules and instantly routes them to their own dedicated developer environment. If one doesn't exist, the system creates it on the fly. This happens in seconds, not weeks. The maker feels empowered because they have immediate access to the tools they need. IT feels secure because that maker is no longer squatting in the default digital slum. This isolation is what finally allows IT to breathe. When you clear out the default environment, you are removing the noise. You are separating the personal productivity experiments from the enterprise-grade solutions. This clarity is the foundation of trust. It can stop being the police officer patrolling a crowded square and start being the urban planner designing a functional city. You know exactly where the high-risk work is happening because you've designed the paths that lead there. There is a direct correlation between this automation and adoption. We call it the 5-minute value rule. Research shows that when a product or a platform delivers its first bit of value in under 5 minutes, adoption rates jump by 40 to 50%. Manual onboarding is the enemy of this speed. If a maker has to wait 3 days for an environment, their momentum dies. They lose interest, or worse, they find a workaround. Automated routing captures that initial spark of innovation and gives it a safe place to grow immediately. Future-pace this for a moment. Imagine a tenant where every new idea has a safe, governed place to exist from day one. You no longer have to worry about sprawl in the traditional sense because sprawl is only a problem when it's unmanaged. In an architected tenant, growth is a sign of health, not a sign of chaos. You've built a system that scales with the business rather than against it. You've replaced the gate with a GPS. The maker gets to their destination faster and IT knows exactly where the car is parked. This isn't just a technical shift, it's a psychological one. You are telling your makers that you trust their intent enough to give them a space, and you're telling your security team that you've contained the risk. You've rebuilt the first section of the bridge, but isolation is only half the battle. Once they are in that space, they still need rules. You still need a way to ensure the data stays where it belongs. The logic of the automated guardrail. Isolation is only half the battle. You've successfully moved the maker into a private workspace, but they still need to connect to the world. A sandbox without data is just a desert. You still need rules. In the old model, rules were synonymous with no. It would look at a connector like Dropbox or Twitter and see a threat. The response was to block it globally. But blocking is a blunt instrument. It doesn't account for context. It doesn't understand that a marketing manager might actually need to post to a social feed while a finance analyst definitely shouldn't. This is where the logic of the automated guardrail changes the conversation. We need to stop thinking about data loss prevention, or DLP, as a no machine. It's a contextual filter. It is the intelligence that lives inside the architecture. When you automate your DLP policies, you are moving away from reactive cleanup. You're moving toward proactive prevention. The ROI on this shift is staggering. Organizations that implement mature automated DLP see a 551% return on investment. That's not a typo. You are saving millions by preventing the breach before the first byte of data ever leaves the building. The mechanism for this is the classification of connectors. We move away from the binary blocked or allowed and move toward business versus non-business. This logic creates a physical barrier at the API level. If a maker builds an app that tries to pull data from your SQL server and push it into a personal Google Sheet, the system stops them. Not because a human reviewed a ticket, but because the guardrail is built into the fabric of the platform. The system simply won't allow those two categories of connectors to talk to each other. The beauty of this approach is the feedback loop. In the manual model, a maker spends 3 weeks building a solution, only to have IT find a violation during a post-build audit. That's a recipe for resentment. It's wasted effort. Real-time feedback beats a post-build audit every single time. With automated guardrails, the maker is notified the moment they try to drag a non-compliant connector onto the canvas. They get a message that says, you can't mix these two data sources here. They learn the rules of the road while they are driving, not after they've crashed. We are also breaking the black box assumption. In the past, IT felt they had to monitor every single click to stay safe. But with AI-driven policy enforcement, the system can detect violations without slowing down the human. It can scan for sensitive patterns, like credit card numbers or internal project names, and apply the policy in milliseconds. This allows the maker to stay in their flow state. They don't feel watched. They feel supported. They know that as long as they stay within the guardrails, they are safe to innovate. The ultimate goal is a system where the guardrails are invisible until you're about to hit the wall. You want to create an environment where doing the right thing is the path of least resistance. When you automate the rules, you aren't just protecting data, you are protecting the relationship between IT and the business. You've removed the friction of the security review and replaced it with a self-governing ecosystem. IT stops being the obstacle and starts being the invisible force that ensures everything stays on track. You've built the road and you've installed the rails. Now you have to decide who is going to maintain the fleet. This requires a fundamental shift in how IT defines its own identity. We have to move from being the bottleneck to becoming a platform provider. From bottleneck to platform provider. This shift requires IT to redefine its own job description. We have to stop thinking of ourselves as the department that builds apps. Instead, we need to see ourselves as the department that builds the factory. This is the platform provider model. In this world, IT isn't responsible for the logic of every single business process. That's impossible to maintain. The math just doesn't work. Instead, IT is responsible for the infrastructure, the security, and the scalability of the environment where those processes live. You are providing the tools, the templates, and the data connections. You are the one making it possible for the rest of the company to move fast without breaking things. When you make this change, you encounter a phenomenon known as the J-curve of productivity. It's a divergence in how different groups experience the benefits of automation. Currently, IT departments that embrace this model are seeing efficiency gains of up to 60%. They are automating their own manual tasks, from environment provisioning to license reclamation. But the makers, the people actually using the platform, are often still struggling with gains at around 10%. There is a gap. The reason for this gap is that IT has the technical depth to optimize the engine, while the business is still learning how to drive the car. Bridging this gap is the new mandate for the modern IT leader. You use the efficiency surge you've gained from automation to provide better makers-as-a-service support. Because you aren't stuck in a basement reviewing manual tickets all day, you finally have the bandwidth to act as a consultant. You can help a business unit architect a complex integration, or you can provide pre-approved components that ensure a professional UI. You are moving from a reactive fix-it shop to a proactive enablement center. And this is where the trust is truly rebuilt. The business starts to see IT as a partner that accelerates their work rather than a hurdle they have to jump over. The numbers back this up. Organizations that shift to this provider model see a 67% increase in solution delivery speed. Think about that. You aren't working harder. You're just working at a different level of the stack. You've stopped reviewing individual tickets and started tuning the engine. You are looking at the telemetry, identifying bottlenecks before they cause a crash, and adjusting the guardrails to keep the traffic flowing. You are managing the platform as a product, not a series of projects. This also leads to a much healthier model of shared technical accountability. One of the biggest fears in IT is that a maker will build something mission-critical and then leave the company, leaving IT to support a black box. In the platform provider model, you solve this through structure. The business owns the logic. They understand the why and the what of the app. IT owns the infrastructure, the where and the how. You establish clear handoff points. By using solution-aware flows and ALM pipelines, you ensure that if an app needs to move from a personal space to an enterprise space, it meets a specific set of technical standards. You are no longer the bottleneck because you've distributed the work of innovation. You've empowered the people closest to the problems to build the solutions while you maintain the integrity of the system. It's a shift from control to coordination. You are the architect of a digital ecosystem that grows organically but stays within the boundaries you've defined. You've successfully moved from the person holding the stop sign to the person designing the highway. But a highway needs more than just pavement and rails. It needs a heartbeat. It needs a way to monitor the health of the entire system in real time. The center of excellence as a strategic hub. You can't just set it and forget it. You need a pulse. The center of excellence is often misunderstood as a committee of bureaucrats who meet once a month to look at outdated spreadsheets. If that's your current model, you've already lost the room. A real COE isn't a committee, it is a capability. It is the intelligence layer that sits directly on top of your automated guardrails. It ensures that the newfound speed you've gained doesn't turn into a high-speed collision. Transformation doesn't have to take years. In reality, it takes exactly 8 weeks. We see a consistent pattern in successful organizations that make this jump. The first 2 weeks are dedicated to the discovery phase. You use your tools to perform a tenant-wide audit. You see what's actually happening under the hood. You find the orphaned apps that no one owns, and you identify the 10 biggest governance gaps in your current environment. By week 4, you are designing your environment tiers. By week 6, you are deploying the COE starter kit. And by week 8, you have a fully operationalized governance engine. You have moved from guessing to knowing. This is where the COE starter kit becomes your most valuable asset. The goal here isn't to play detective or catch people breaking rules. It is to unmask shadow IT without the police vibe that usually kills innovation. When you find an unmanaged app, the COE doesn't send a threatening email from a no-reply address. It sends an invitation. It says, "We see you've built something that provides real value. Here is how we can help you make it enterprise ready." This shift in tone changes the entire cultural dynamic. You are bringing the work out of the shadows by offering a better alternative, not by issuing a citation. You are becoming a mentor instead of a warden. There is a hidden security feature in this model: community. When makers feel recognized and supported, their behavior fundamentally changes. The research is clear. Recognized makers are 72% more likely to follow compliance standards voluntarily. Why? Because they finally have skin in the game. They aren't trying to bypass a faceless IT entity that they perceive as an obstacle. They are participating in a shared ecosystem. They take massive pride in building things the right way because the right way is finally the easy way. Compliance becomes a badge of honor rather than a hoop to jump through. Finally, we have to change what we measure. If your primary metric is active users, you are looking at the wrong map. Active users tell you about volume, but they tell you absolutely nothing about value or risk. A strategic COE tracks adoption velocity instead. How fast are solutions moving from the personal developer space to the production environment? It tracks risk reduction. How many high-risk connectors are being replaced by secure internal APIs? You are measuring the health of the bridge, not just the number of cars crossing it. This data gives you the leverage to prove the ROI of your digital strategy to the board. You aren't just managing a platform, you are managing the future of how your company works. You are moving from a state of capable to a state of efficient. And this is where the bridge is finally rebuilt. Measuring the cultural shift. The final piece of this transformation isn't technical, it's behavioral. You can deploy the most sophisticated environment routing on the planet, but if the vibe of the organization remains defensive, the bridge will stay closed. We have to look at how these automated tools fundamentally change the way people feel about their work. In the old model, the relationship was defined by friction. It was a constant tug-of-war over access. But when the guardrails become invisible and the onboarding becomes instant, the tension evaporates. You start to see a shift from a culture of permission to a culture of partnership. You can actually measure this shift. We look at trust as a quantifiable KPI. One of the clearest indicators is the conflict resolution time between IT and your makers. When you move away from manual gatekeeping, the number of escalations drops off a cliff. Why? Because the rules are objective and the access is immediate. There's no one to argue with. The system is the arbiter. When a maker hits a DLP boundary, they don't call IT to complain. They simply look for a compliant way to achieve their goal. Research shows that organizations using this automated approach see a 25 to 30% faster implementation rate. This isn't because the software is faster, it's because the humans are no longer paralyzed by the fear of being watched or blocked. They feel empowered. This is the transition from being capable to being efficient. In a capable organization, you have policies that mitigate risk, but people still feel the weight of the oversight. It's a healthy partnership, but it's still visible. In an efficient organization, governance becomes the background noise of the enterprise. It's just how things work. People don't think about compliance any more than they think about the oxygen in the room. They just build, they innovate, they solve problems. They share their workflows voluntarily because they know IT is there to help them scale, not to shut them down. The outcome of this cultural shift is a state of governed innovation. You've successfully rebuilt the bridge by changing the underlying model of interaction. You've moved from a world where IT was a destination of no to a world where IT is the foundation of how. The maker is no longer a shadow figure working in the dark. They are a recognized contributor to the digital strategy. And IT is no longer a bottleneck. You are the architect of a system that allows the entire company to move as fast as its best ideas. The Cold War is over. The bridge is finally open for business. You've moved from being a gatekeeper to being an architect of scale. The transformation is complete, but the work starts now. Your challenge is simple. Audit your default environment today. Identify the top 10 governance gaps that are currently driving your makers into the shadows. Once you see the gaps, you can begin to build the rails. Step 1 is the audit. Step 2 is the environment routing. Step 3 is the community. If this shift in perspective changed how you think about your digital strategy, connect with me, Mirko Peters, on LinkedIn. Let's find your next breakthrough together. Stay focused, build safe, move fast.